Jessica's claws tore through the chaos as a massive boar charged with deadly force. Just when all hope seemed lost, a pack of snarling hyenas closed in, until Jessica roared, not in fear but in command. The wild fell silent, but what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. 1. Under the merciless glare of the African sun, the savannah was a tapestry of heat and shadows. Jessica, a powerful leopard, with a coat speckled like dappled sunlight filtering through leaves, lay crouched beneath a thorny acacia. Her breath was steady, but her amber eyes flicked constantly toward the rustling brush where her 3 cubs huddled. Tiny, fragile balls of fur, barely weeks old, their soft mules barely audible over the midday stillness. Jessica's world had shrunk to this very spot, this fragile sanctuary. She was fueled by a raw, unwavering drive. These cubs were her legacy, the only survivors of a brutal world where strength was survival and weakness meant death. The memory of losing her mate, taken by a cunning hyena pack months before, haunted her like a shadow, sharpening her instincts to an edge as sharp as her claws. She had learned that trust in the wild was a luxury she could no longer afford. Every sound, every movement around her den was a potential threat. The wind shifted, carrying a scent that snapped Jessica's muscles taut. Something was coming, something heavy, something dangerous. The underbrush exploded with movement as Hank, the wild boar, crashed through with surprising speed for his bulky frame. His coarse, bristled back shimmered with sweat, and his curved tusks shone like daggers in the harsh sunlight. His eyes were wild, pupils dilated with hunger and desperation. This wasn't a reckless charge. This was the calculated desperation of a father fighting for the survival of his own family. Hank wasn't just any wild boar. His life had been a relentless grind against nature's cruelty. Constant battles with rival boars, narrow escapes from lions and crocodiles, endless scrounging for roots and insects. The gnawing emptiness in his belly wasn't mere hunger, it was survival's cruel mandate. The weight of providing for his starving family, his mate, and the young ones hidden in the distant thickets, drove him into a dangerous gamble. His gaze locked on Jessica's cubs, vulnerable and unprotected, innocent targets in a brutal game. Jessica's heartbeat surged, the primal instinct of a mother igniting her entire being. Her eyes narrowed into slits, muscles coiling beneath her spotted fur like tightly wound springs. She let out a low, guttural growl, a sound that vibrated through the dry earth. It was a warning, a promise of the fierce resistance that awaited. To her, Hank was more than a boar. He was the embodiment of a looming nightmare, the embodiment of all the threats that could shatter the fragile bond she had fought so hard to preserve. The cubs, sensing the danger, whimpered softly, their tiny bodies trembling against the dry grass. Their innocence, their vulnerability, struck at the core of Jessica's soul. The tension in the air thickened like a storm about to break. Every rustle, every snapped twig under Hank's heavy steps echoed like a thunderclap in the silent savannah. The standoff was electric, predator and prey locked in a deadly ballet choreographed by survival. Hank advanced, slow and steady, tusks raised like cruel weapons, driven by the gnawing desperation that had clouded his judgment. His snarls were raw, driven by hunger but edged with a fierce determination born from years of hardship. He was not a villain born from malice, but a survivor shaped by the merciless hand of nature, forced into this confrontation by the harsh demands of life. Jessica's body tensed further, every muscle ready to explode into motion. She was no stranger to danger. Every heartbeat had been a lesson in vigilance since her mate's death. But this threat cut deeper, striking at the heart of her very existence. The wild boar wasn't just an obstacle to be avoided. He was a challenge to her authority, a direct threat to the fragile future she carried in her cubs' lives. The savannah seemed to hold its breath. Birds stilled their songs, insects ceased their hum. Even the wind, which moments before had danced carelessly among the tall grasses, paused as if in solemn witness to the unfolding drama. The moment stretched, taut with unspoken menace and desperate hope. Jessica's gaze burned with a fierce promise. Come what may, she would protect her cubs, no matter the cost. This was more than a fight for food or territory. It was a battle for survival, love, and legacy in the unforgiving wild. The stakes had never been higher, and the world beyond this tense clearing was oblivious to the fierce storm about to erupt beneath the blazing sun. Jessica sprang from the shadows with lethal grace, her body a coiled weapon honed by years of hardship. Claws extended like sharpened blades, she aimed directly for Hank's thick neck, a decisive strike meant to disable and intimidate. The wild boar reacted with terrifying swiftness for his size, bracing his broad, muscular shoulders and meeting her charge with a savage snort that sent a cloud of dust spiraling into the air. His tusks, curved and razor-sharp, gleamed with deadly promise as he lowered his head, turning the battle into a brutal collision of force and fury. The clash erupted with explosive violence. Jessica's paws slammed into tough, bristly hide. Hank's tusks sliced dangerously close, scraping fur and flesh. The earth beneath them shook with the savage rhythm of their struggle. Scratches gouged the dry dirt, broken branches snapped, and the thick scent of blood and sweat hung heavy, mingling with the raw tension of life-or-death combat. Teeth snapped with agonizing bites, muscles rippled beneath matted fur and coarse bristles, and the wildness of the savannah came alive in the fury of the fight. Jessica's mind narrowed to a single, unbreakable focus: her cubs. The soft cries of her young echoed in the recesses of her thoughts, driving her to hold the line, to deny the encroaching threat anything but pain and defeat. She was more than a hunter now. She was a guardian, a mother whose fierce love carved strength from exhaustion, who transformed fear into an unyielding resolve. Each swipe, each growl was a declaration. These cubs would live. She would ensure it. Hank fought with a desperation born of starvation, his breath ragged and eyes wild with hunger-driven madness. This was no mere territorial skirmish. It was the precipice of survival for him and the family he struggled to feed. Every charge was an act of risk, every dodge a gamble. His brute strength was formidable, but so too was the cunning born from countless battles against lions, snakes, and rival boars. His tusks slashed in arcs of violence, aiming not just to wound, but to end the fight swiftly, though the cost to himself was clear. The fight raged on in a blur of motion, savage and unrelenting, when suddenly the unmistakable, chilling sound of laughter shattered the brutal symphony of growls and snarls. It was a high-pitched, cruel cackle. Hyenas. A pack, drawn by the scent of blood and the chaos of conflict, closed in from the shadows. At their helm was Mason, a lean alpha with eyes sharp as obsidian and a mind honed for exploitation. His grin was a twisted promise. He saw opportunity where others saw only danger. Mason's pack moved with ruthless efficiency, circling like vultures poised for the kill. Their approach was silent but deadly. Years of scavenging and hunting had taught them to wait for weakness, to strike where resistance was lowest. The hyenas' motivations were simple: opportunistic, calculated, cold. They craved an easy meal, one won not by risking their own necks, but by preying on others' struggles. Jessica's breathing quickened, a primal alarm warning of impending doom. The fight that had been brutal now teetered on the edge of catastrophe. Outnumbered, fatigued, and facing a relentless pack, she seemed to falter under the weight of mounting danger. The cubs were moments away from disaster, yet, deep inside, something roared louder than fear, something fierce and unexpected. With a guttural growl that echoed like thunder, Jessica unleashed a mighty roar. Not one of panic, but of command. It was a sound heavy with authority, defiance, and ancient power. Her eyes blazed with a fearless fire that startled even herself. The hyenas paused, caught off guard by the leopard's raw, unwavering will. Mason snarled, stepping forward to test her resolve, but Jessica held her ground, her muscles coiled and ready to strike again. The tension rippled through the air like a live wire. The hyenas hesitated, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. This was no ordinary prey. They faced a force of nature fueled by desperate love and unyielding courage. One by one, the pack retreated, shadows dissolving into the underbrush, leaving Jessica standing tall amidst the dirt and blood. The sharp edges of despair softened, replaced by a surge of hope. Compassion for Jessica's unbreakable spirit ignited in the heart of the wilderness itself, while anger toward the invading threats, both boar and hyenas, burned hotter than ever. The wild had witnessed a mother's defiance, a fierce stand against overwhelming odds. The battle was far from over, but for now, the tide had turned. The final moments unfolded with a ruthless clarity, the world narrowing into a crucible where only the strongest would survive. Jessica's body burned with pain, muscles trembling beneath the weight of exhaustion, yet deep within her surged a reservoir of unyielding power, a last spark of primal fire that ignited her resolve beyond reason. Every instinct, every sinew aligned toward one singular goal: drive Hank away, safeguard her cubs, and reclaim her dominion. The air around her thickened with tension, charged like a coiled spring, waiting to unleash devastation. Hank, massive and feral, bore the marks of the savage encounter. Bruises mottled his coarse hide. His breath came in ragged gasps, and his dark eyes flickered with a flicker of reluctant respect mingled with desperate hunger. His bulk still posed a threat, but the storm that had fueled his assault was beginning to crumble. Jessica's teeth bared in a silent promise. This fight was far from over, and the cost would be his humiliation. With a guttural growl that reverberated through the cracked earth beneath them, Jessica sprang forward, claws extended with lethal precision. The strike was swift, a whirlwind of motion designed to overwhelm and disorient. Her paws hammered into Hank's flanks, raking deep furrows of pain that forced the boar to stagger back. The momentum shifted instantly. Driven by the relentless surge of maternal fury, she pressed forward without hesitation, pushing the once aggressive assailant to retreat. Hank's legs faltered, and with a final shuddering snort, he slunk away into the thick brush, defeated not just by physical might, but by the unbreakable spirit that had refused to yield. Simultaneously, Mason's pack, those shadowy shapes that had haunted the edges of the battle, watched with wary eyes. The alpha hyena's cunning mind recognized the fire blazing in Jessica's gaze, a power that no mere opportunist could challenge without consequence. The pack's snarls softened into cautious whimpers as Mason gave a subtle signal. Slowly the hyenas melted back into the gathering dusk, their silhouettes swallowed by the night's protective veil. They left behind the echoes of their eerie laughter, replaced now by a profound silence, broken only by Jessica's labored breaths and the gentle whimpers of her cubs. The cubs themselves, small and trembling, emerged from their hiding place, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. They approached their mother cautiously, nuzzling her fur with tentative affection. In their innocence lay the purest testament to Jessica's sacrifice and valor, their survival a silent hymn to her unyielding courage. Their tiny paws brushed against her battered form, grounding her in the reality that this fierce battle was fought not for glory, but for the fragile continuation of life. Jessica lowered her head to them, her breath mingling with theirs in a soft, protective murmur. The fierce warrior had momentarily softened into a guardian, the raw ferocity replaced by tender reassurance. Her gaze, fierce moments before, now shimmered with an ancient, enduring love. She had fought not just with claws and teeth, but with every fragment of her being, her strength born from a bond deeper than instinct, a mother's love that transcended pain and fear. Hank's departure marked more than a simple retreat. It was a moment of reckoning. His hunger, once an uncontrollable force driving him to desperate violence, was now tempered by defeat. The wilderness, unforgiving as ever, would remind him of this lesson harshly. Strength alone does not guarantee survival. Respect must be earned. His silhouette vanished into the tangled undergrowth, a humbled figure swallowed by the unforgiving wild, carrying with him the bitter taste of failure. For the unseen watchers of this brutal dance, the unseen audience of the savannah, the emotional currents shifted dramatically. Hatred and fear, which had pulsed like a dark undercurrent through the fray, now dissolved into a complex tapestry of compassion and simmering anger. Compassion for Jessica's indomitable spirit, the raw authenticity of her fight. Anger toward the intrusion of Hank and the hyenas, who had threatened the fragile sanctuary of life with ruthless greed. The story's pulse quickened, culminating in a crescendo of relief and awe that rippled through the wilderness itself. And then came Jessica's triumphant roar, a sound so pure, so filled with victorious defiance, it seemed to shake the very air. It was more than a sound, it was a declaration, a timeless anthem sung by every mother who ever stood between danger and her young. That roar echoed long after the dust settled, a fierce reminder etched into the bones of the land. True strength lies not in mere physical power, but in the unexpected depths of love, sacrifice, and courage. In that roar, the wild found its heart, an unbreakable, shining force that no darkness could extinguish. Jessica's victory was not just a personal triumph, it was a universal truth laid bare, a story of survival, hope, and the fierce, unyielding love that makes heroes of us all.